All right, I'd like to call to order the Transportation Advisory Committee.
Recording in progress.
It's okay. For November 21st, 2023. And can we get a roll call?
Yes, Mr. Rendelman.
Here.
Mr. Freeze.
Here.
Ms. Wadsworth.
Here.
Ms. Donovan. Here. Mr. McEnroth.
Here.
Mr. Simmons.
Here.
Mr. Morgan.
Here.
Ms. Hernandez.
Here.
All righty. Approval of minutes from our last meeting, October 24th. Since I was not here, I will ask if there's any adaptations, changes, or if somebody would like to make a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting. I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And we're approved. Any changes for the adoption of today's agenda? Does anybody have any additions, subtractions? All right, then we will continue forward. And no public comments, so we can go straight on to new business and discuss our December meeting. I assume that is a, do we want to have one?
Exactly.
Oh, I thought that was about the topics. How close to Christmas is this one?
Let's see here. It'd be the 19th, which is the week before.
A week prior. My biggest question is, do we have anything urgently pressing that would need to be approved or decided upon coming up for that? So if there's not anything urgent, my opinion would be that we could go ahead and forego this one, unless there is somebody else that would disagree.
No.
All right, everybody in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Any opposed? No December meeting. Merry Christmas. And we're on to the citizen request. Going back to October 24th, do we have an update? Is that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so we've got a visual in the packet. And so the request was to look at addition of stop signs, I believe, at just Rock Street. We went ahead and looked at.
Oh.
Oh,
Can't
she can't hear you.
Just Dana's? If you pull the one over the mirror was using?
I'll try the other
Yeah,
one.
see if that one works.
This is the one that we tested with her.
Yeah, that's the.
All right, can you hear me now?
And thumbs up. Yep.
Okay,
All right.
so at a previous Transportation Advisory Committee meeting, a citizen requested a review of stop signs, I believe at Hiram and Rock Street. As a part of the review, staff looked at the entire corridor of Hiram. And so here what you can see on this map are the red dots are existing stop signs located generally on the side streets. And so we took a look, there were no existing stop signs on the side streets on Hiram, which is inconsistent with the nature of that neighborhood. And so each of those green dots, the crews will go out and install stop signs on those side streets. So technically, they don't qualify for our stop sign policy, but because Front and Apperson all have them, it felt inconsistent in this section of town. So moving forward, those will go in. I'm not sure when the crew is scheduled to do that. Usually takes a week or two between calling for the locates and installing them.
I think John just wanted to hear your feedback of whether all of you.
So you mean that this was a four-way bluff? Basically, whoever thought had the right of way would go in this whole section here?
And that's standard practice in two local streets. It encourages drivers to pay attention and slow down a little bit more because everybody's looking where the other traffic is coming from.
So within the next 2 weeks, those will be up, is that what I'm hearing?
I
Okay.
suspect, yeah,
And is-
the holiday might.
And do we have the way to close the loop feedback-wise with the citizen and maybe let them know what's coming?
Yeah, Vance, I believe, was good and more.
Was gonna reach out? Okay.
And I'm perfectly fine with the staff position on this, but why, did you all consider just removing the stop signs that are out of compliance? And why not just remove the stop signs that are not working the way they should be?
So I suspect if we removed the stop signs that didn't qualify, then you would have an audience full of folks upset that their stop sign was removed.
Fair enough.
Other questions for Dana? All right. Sounds like pretty positive feedback. Park Place Neighborhood Meeting, Julie.
So my updates kind of dovetail on with, piggyback on the comments, I guess, or the stop signs that'll be installed. So I too had a citizen that brought up the Hiram and Rock Street, that no stop signs in either directions, but then also talked about, Hiram and Holcomb. So, and I just saw, if you go further down, so they, if you're taking, if you're trying to, that road is kind of, it's angled. And so you have to come up and as if you look to your left, but you have to kind of go out further out a little bit more in order to like be able to take a right. And because you can't see very well. So I did just Google Maps and looked and I knew exactly what she was talking about because you can't do it when you're on there either. So I don't know if maybe since you're already looking at that street, if that's something that can also be looked at. And then Pete Walter from the city also gave an update. He's the city planning manager. He gave an update as to where the city's at with the Park Place development. And I know Mayor was just mentioning the, like, how do you balance it, like the growth and traffic concerns. And he talked about some of the design standards or traffic analysis that was taken into consideration when they were looking at that project. But I don't know if like the 213 and Beaver Creek, the apartments they're still under construction, nobody's moved in yet. When that analysis was done, how much more traffic that's going to add there, and then on potentially if this development goes in, then 213 in Redland, just how much congestion. And he made a couple comments such as, when the city looks at this and the developer pays for like their part of the problem, but that problem may not, the funding may go into like a pot. The city may not have the resources to at that time address like whatever needs to happen holistically. And so at some point further down the road, when the city either has funding or the city has a grant, they may fix that problem then, but like how long are we talking about before we see like a solution to that 213, which is already a mess? And then, I keep, I live over in that direction and I keep seeing like a new building like go up like every other week. And I'm like, how many buildings are gonna be in Highway 213 and Beaver Creek? I think I counted like 5 or 6 the other day. So I don't know if there's plans for additional, like how many more cars that will add to the streets.
So Dana, when the SDCs are paid for by the developers, does that money get earmarked in any way, shape, and form specifically to mitigate the problems that I shouldn't say problems, but
Right.
the growth of the area specifically that they're affecting, or does it just go right into the general budget and gets used however it's deemed necessary at the time?
So SDCs are, just for folks that might not be familiar, it's a system development charge. It's a fee that's The methodology is based on all the growth of the city. So those fees are set based on anticipated growth, cost of projects, and so it creates a fee. For transportation, it's a per trip fee. And so we look at that in our master planning. So we collect that transportation SDC fee. It's for building capacity. So then when we look at a project, it often has a capacity component and sort of an existing problem component. And those SDCs are put into one large bucket. So kind of like Julie was explaining, if I put my SDCs for each project in a separate bucket, I would never have a full bucket. So I have to kind of balance those revenues with projects in, various areas of the city. And then some projects are 100% SDC. So the Myers Road Extension project that we built a few years ago, 100% SDC because it was building brand new capacity for the roadway system. A project like 213 in Beaver Creek, I'm going off memory, I think it's about 40, maybe 45% SDC eligible. So if my project cost is 3 million, I need a pretty big amount of gas tax funding, which is usually where my constraint is. So kind of, I think wrapping back, SDCs go in a big bucket, and we use those to try and address problems throughout the city. So Julie also kind of referenced, we do also on some projects, like the 2 new residential multifamily projects on Maple Lane, collect what we refer to as a proportional share. So each of those projects doesn't, what we call break the 213 and Beaver Creek intersection. So it doesn't fully create a problem that they would need to address, but they proportionally contribute to that. And so they've each been assessed a fee, a portion of a fee. Now those fees do go into that bucket for that project.
Right, maybe a little follow-up. I hear most everything there, but is the bucket necessarily an expansion bucket for capacity? Or is it also dealing with just infrastructure, paving and general maintenance type stuff? Does it go into that same bucket, I guess is what I'm asking.
When we collect the proportional share, it's really for a specific project. So those 2 multifamily on Maple Lane are for the 213 and Beaver Creek capacity project that will convert that lane. Now, when we talk about that project, we know there's no way we can build that project and some of the changes we need to make on Beaver Creek. So ideally, I'd like to change some of the use of the pavement and the lane layout between Beaver Creek from 213 to Maple Lane. And in order to do that, that pavement is raveling today. So I will have to fund some of the project with paving monies. So a lot of times it's kind of like, I've got a little bucket of money here and I've got some money here, and how can I move a project forward with capacity, but also address my maintenance issues while I'm out there at the same time?
A question that seems to be around a little bit is there any effort to segregate the systems development charges that are collected in a certain area, say South End Road? Is there any effort to put an equivalent amount that is collected in that area back into improvements in that area?
So I know when we did the, what originally started as the Beaver Creek concept plan area, which we renamed Thimble Creek, to kind of remove that confusion of where we were looking at, there were discussions about creating an SDC for a specific area. So other parts of the metro region have adopted SDCs that are for an urban growth boundary expansion area. Oregon City has chosen not to do that. So in that scenario, you would see the SDCs for that new area extremely high because they're building all new roads. And so you have to kind of decide, do you manage those as separate areas, or do you look at the city as a whole? And so during those discussions, I believe they happened with the South End Concept Plan area, and I know they happened some with the Thimble Creek. And we've chosen not to adopt different SDCs in different parts of town.
Thank you.
Julie, does that
Yeah.
cover your questions, or did you have some more there?
No, that was all I had.
All right. I'm assuming Dana's back up on the Public Works report as well?
Yes. So we've got a slide with the new painted curb. So again, I think at the last meeting, we presented some options. The streets crew has gone out and painted the curb and placed the no parking signs in the intersection. I believe the next two slides also show the results of the covert radar box. We have placed it at 8th and Washington and at 10th and Washington. The data was pretty similar between the two locations. We did see at 10th and Washington, our max speed was one vehicle at 60 miles per hour.
Tim, were we in a hurry that night?
No, it wasn't me.
Patrol car.
But otherwise, the 50th and 85th percentiles were pretty similar.
Let's go with that.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
50th was 26, 85th is 30, okay.
I don't have much else on that. I do have two other topics. I would like to just share a quick update that have, one is new since we put together this agenda. So I have heard back from ODOT on the Highway 213 speed limit. So we asked them to evaluate the section between Redland Road and I think it's maybe the signal there that's the half on Washington Street. I think it's Washington.
Right with the gas station and the car
Yeah, by the
wash
gas
is.
station, and then the other side of 213, which is Prairie Schooner. And so we had asked them to look at that. It has been the 2 years and a little bit extra change. And so they have come back and proposed dropping the speed limit down to 50 miles an hour. So the section from Redland up to Beaver Creek is currently 55. The section from Redland to the Washington Prairie Schooner is currently 55. And then from there to the on-ramps is 45. And so they're gonna drop that middle section down to 50.
I'm surprised that they just didn't make it 45 the whole way with all those traffic lights in there. So do you think they'll put a radar sign, you know, your speed is, to get people to slow down? Because right now, the current speed limit's about 65 going down there.
I don't know that ODOT has that kind of equipment.
Probably just gonna go out and change the signs and be done with it.
But if the mayor would like to put her red light cameras there, that'd be an opportune place. They would solve all the budget problems of the city police department.
So I don't have a timeline when the signs will change. It's ODOT crews that go out and change those signs. I do drive that section every day, so as soon as I see they switch the signs, we'll do some social media postings to let the community know.
They typically put the little orange
flag.
flags on
I
them when
don't
they
know
change
if they
them.
do that or not.
Okay.
That's something that our crews always do. But I don't know if ODOT will do that.
So what was their data, what did their data show them that required a 5 mile per hour reduction versus 10? Or even doing the 5 miles? Did they give you any feedback on it other than 2
They
years?
did. I mean, they have a full technical analysis, and they're limited to, they have to kind of stick within the boundaries of the 50th percentile speed component. I don't have the full technical report with me.
Do you think they did any speed tests for what the average speed was and what the maximum speed was?
Yeah.
That's what's in the report. I didn't bring a copy today.
So they have guidelines as far as what the report brings back and what it institutes the change. So we would just.
I would like to
basically-
see what the maximum speed limit was on that section.
It seems like this brings a lesson for McLaughlin Boulevard too, because if you have a section of road where people are speeding currently, it makes it harder to change it on an ODOT road. So we may have trouble getting them to lower speed from Kenema to downtown, for example.
Are they working off the 50th or the 85th,
So for this, they would have looked at the 50th.
50th?
So I do think with McLaughlin, we have a few more tools in our tool belt that we can use. So that McLaughlin corridor is a special transportation area, which is basically, we worked with ODOT years ago to get that designation. And that really acknowledges that the corridor is more than moving cars, that it's bicycle and pedestrian, that we've got businesses along this corridor. And years ago, that was ODOT's mechanism for how do we address a highway through a city? And so we worked through that. Prior to the Willamette Falls Legacy Project going through their master planning back in, I think, 2014, we also worked with ODOT to, and the city adopted a mixed-use multimodal area. For short, we call it an MMA. And in that, the city acknowledges that we want to prioritize movement of people over movement of vehicles. And so these are the tools we've kind of had with ODOT. Since we've adopted those two items, ODOT has adopted what they call a blueprint for urban design. And so really kind of that next step of, we know a lot of our highways go through the middle of your downtowns or the middle of, urban areas. And a highway in a rural area, or even like a 213, where it is, really focused on the vehicle movement. So we've got this new manual that gives us options and a better way to work with ODOT to get something that's more local on 99E. And so as the McLaughlin Boulevard Enhancement Project moves forward, we'll be using that blueprint for urban design to really identify the pieces that we want on McLaughlin Boulevard in our downtown.
Can that dovetail with the new county speed adaptation authority? Or is this completely outside of that because it's a state highway?
That's a good question. I'm not sure the right answer yet.
Okay.
I think kind of looking at, are there ways to help the corridor feel more bicycle and pedestrian friendly? Just driving the section from the tunnel to 10th Street, it's just asphalt and concrete from, you see a building and it's asphalt concrete and then you see the river. Where north of 10th Street, it feels more welcoming with street trees and some medians and different things that make the corridor feel, smaller and doesn't feel like a racetrack. So I think we've got some options that we can look at in there to try and address speed, but I think we're always open to, have you seen something in another community? Did you notice something on vacation that would really help that corridor?
So could the city extend that redevelopment that they did, like for from the on-ramp of 205 through that area, where you've got the trees and the turn lanes and all that? I mean, could that be part of the ODOT to extend that all the way? And then what is the Indian development gonna do? Are they on hold for the old paper mill, or? Because that was the other thing, because then you'd be able to definitely slow it down if they do that development in there, because you're gonna have a lot of pedestrian traffic from, for parking and accessing the restaurants and things that they plan on putting in there. But I haven't seen anything lately in the paper where they're at on that.
I think they're kind of working through a technical piece. The city continues to coordinate with them as they're ready to share things with us.
That's good.
So
So in the meantime, could ODOT continue that project along there or fund part of that for the city to do that, you know, from the gas station to the south?
So at this point, we've got the funding to do concept design. Once we kind of refine that concept design, we will need to go and find additional grant funding to get us to construction drawings. And then probably another grant or funding mechanism to build the improvements.
Do we have any data on when 10th Street North was adapted? Do we have any data that tells us how that affected flow of traffic and speed and the things that we're thinking of changing from prior to the development?
Possibly. I'd have to look if we've got pre and post traffic counts. I know as part of that project, we did do some pretty big changes to how traffic moves. Prior to that project, we had no pedestrian crossings until I think 10th Street. So we added the one at 14th and 15th and at 12th. So we added in all of those crosswalks and pieces, so those would have likely impacted flow of traffic. We also had what many referred to as a southbound bypass lane. It actually had a curb and you could bypass some of the traffic signals heading toward Canby. So that was removed as part of the project to reinstate those pedestrian crossings. Because with that, you can't have a bypass lane to move the cars through faster without a way to stop them. So we took the full bypass lane out, brought back the crosswalks, and try and encourage folks to feel comfortable walking and visiting downtown.
I guess what I'm getting at is if we extend that concept, I mean, would we expect it to give the outcome that we're looking for? If we just kept it consistent all the way through, kept that median with the trees in it, put the sidewalks in, the bike, you know, just made it look all like one piece, like it was done at the same time. Is that conceivable cost-wise? And then also, does it achieve the goal of traffic calming?
So I think we'll look at those things. We are a little more width constrained between 10th and 8th with the viaduct. So I don't know if you've spent much time on McLaughlin along the riverside, but that structure is essentially a decking type of structure built out over kind of the rock that's underneath it.
Is that from kind of McMinimans all the way down to the hard corner?
I
That's all
think it's a little
viaduct.
further north. You can actually see, it's actually decking boards, not a concrete structure. And so you can actually, I think, kind of see through them at times, but it's really just like an overlook.
I was just saying, at this point, are we just looking for ideas? Is that what we're asking for, is if anybody has ideas on that?
Yeah, and so our open house, and we'll share with TAC as well, but our open house should go live on December 6th for the McLaughlin Boulevard Enhancement Project, where we'll walk through all the alternatives on the table and collect feedback. So I'll have Audrey share that with the committee when it's ready.
Is that something in person or is that gonna be on Zoom?
It's an online format.
Okay.
My second quick item that I don't have on the agenda is I'm working through the process for another all roads transportation safety grant. And I don't have everything finalized yet, but my intention is requesting the city commission support for a grant application for the remaining traffic signal improvements that I've not yet completed. And so that would include those yellow reflectorized backplates around the traffic signals in town. I think I've got maybe 9 or 10 intersections that don't yet have those. And so adding those, I've got what we refer to as a doghouse traffic signal at the Malala and Holmes Lane. So it's got 1 red, 2 yellows, and 2 greens, and that's an outdated signal head. So it's not as familiar to drivers as a standard 3 light or a 5 light. signal that's all one line. And so I would propose to replace that with a more standard signal head. I think I've got 2 intersections that could be converted to a flashing yellow arrow. So an intersection that we know would be safe enough to let a driver make a choice to make a left or not against a flashing yellow arrow. And then I'm evaluating if the benefit cost ratio would support pulling fiber interconnect in a section of traffic signals. So currently our signals on Washington from Abernathy to 12th are connected with fiber. That means Clackamas County, who maintains our traffic signals, can go in via the fiber connection and diagnose signal issues without having to dispatch someone, so we pay less in maintenance. It also allows them to pull up the cameras at the intersections and diagnose problems from the camera. We've pulled fiber down the Malala Streetscape project, and our current Beaver Creek Road project is pulling fiber from Maple Lane all the way to Warner Milne. So I've got a stretch that's missing fiber that goes from 7th and Washington up the 7th Avenue corridor, turns the corner and continues up Malala. So I'm looking to see if I can add that component to the grant application without bringing my benefit cost ratio too low. So this is a program that's fully data driven, and the highest benefit cost ratio projects get funded. So if I can add that in there, that's a huge benefit to how we operate our signals and how quickly we can address issues. So I didn't have things pulled together to get it in front of you guys for a letter of support, but I'll have a city commission request for resolution of support for the grant.
What intersections are you looking at for the flashing yellow?
Let's see. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to remember the 2 that I have. I don't think it's going to come to me.
It's okay.
Yeah. I can share that with you in an email if you'd like. I just
That's fine.
don't have it with me. And that's all I have for the Public Works report.
Thank you. Does anybody have any follow-up questions for Dana?
I'll mention that a while back, I forget what year it was, we talked about re-signing by Home Depot, you know, by getting back on the 205. I will tell you there is less U-turns on Redlands Road than there was a couple years ago. So I think that signage is actually working, that people are not lost getting on 213 and thinking they're going south or they can go across. So that's a applaud to your group for getting people heading to the right direction.
Yeah, and again, I think as you guys drive around, you might notice things that we don't, so always let us know.
I'll give you my list.
All righty. If I don't hear any further questions, we are at the bottom of our agenda. So I think we can adjourn the meeting for tonight, and we will not be meeting in December, so we will see everybody in January. Have a wonderful holiday and New Year. Meeting's adjourned.
You as well.